West Germany's allegedly most secret location during the Cold War. Intended to serve as the seat of government in a nuclear emergency, but already during construction, the enemy was watching. Deep underground near Berlin, East Germany's military elite conducted rehearsals for nuclear escalation. However, it's not the East German army that was in command here. Underground in a residential area along the River Moselle, 1,500 square meters provide secret protection, not for people, but for billions. North of Dresden in East Germany. Here, a nuclear attack could be launched at any time, a weapons depot that not even state security knows about. For decades during the Cold War, these lost places are Germany's secret strongholds of power. Just 30 kilometers south of Bonn, the former capital of West Germany, here, nestled among the vineyards, lies the former bunker of the federal government. At nearly 5 billion Deutschmarks, this was, at the time, the largest single investment in the history of the Federal Republic of Germany. Some 25 tons of steel and concrete concealed the bunker tunnel. Those taking cover inside belonged to a select group of individuals designated to govern the Federal Republic in case of a Third World War. Officially, the facility was referred to as the temporary seat of the constitutional organs of the Federal Republic of Germany in times of war or crisis to maintain their ability to function. Jörg Diesta from the Bunker Documentation Center knows that initially its mission was narrower.
When the bunker was built, it was intended for government use. At that time, the executive authorities were in charge. This changed with the amendment to the Constitution in 1968. Initially, even the president was not to use the bunker.
Author Jörg Diesta has dedicated years to researching archives and compiling information. In a crisis, approximately 3,000 people were to maintain the Federal Republic of Germany from within a 17-kilometer-long bunker, their survival assured for up to 30 days. This bunker features a total of 936 bedrooms and 897 offices, organized into 5 identical sections. Each section is completely self-sufficient, equipped with its own command center, ready to take over if others fail.
The oldest document about this facility is from 1952. It's a confidential cabinet decision made under Konrad Adenauer. They agreed that they need a fallback option for the government. Another military conflict could break out. The key question was always, when will it happen? Can we use the time to prepare and implement defensive measures?
It is not until 1971 that this facility, at a depth of 110 meters, is ready. The bunker landscape cost around 4.7 billion Deutschmarks. Around 3,300 steel doors separate the compartments, making them virtually impenetrable.
This is the decontamination station. In an emergency, latecomers don't enter the bunker with nuclear, biological, or chemical agents on their clothing. They need to shower using an extremely diluted mixture of hydrochloric acid, citric acid, and formic acid. There is also an acid storage container. Everything is already set up so that you don't have to prepare anything in an emergency. The bottles are ready, and there's even a peephole to check into the shower through a small window. The windshield wiper is very German. It's part of the setup that allows us to see inside. It operates with a hand crank, so I can get a clear view if I want to know what's happening in the shower.
Mandatory security protocols before reaching the most classified location in West Germany.
This is where things get serious. What we've seen so far has just been the entrance. We are at a depth of 75 meters. There are two massive doors, the heaviest doors found in a nuclear bunker in Germany. They can withstand up to 100 atmospheric overpressure. This is far more than the original specification of 10 air pressure set for this bunker. The government opted for a more robust design, hence the heavier doors. Once we pass through these doors, we enter a section where personnel would have been stationed in the event of an emergency. The front area would remain deserted.
Down here, life would continue, even while tens of thousands perished above ground. For during the Cold War, both East and West reckon with the worst, a nuclear strike and the destruction of the enemy. Still, the powerful individuals who would seek refuge in the bunker were determined to maintain their composure, both inwardly and outwardly.
The hair salon is not commonly found in many other bunkers. Even the GDR government bunker did not have one. In the West, the question of how to maintain a well-groomed appearance during a crisis was addressed early on. Initially, the plan was to set up 2 hair salons, but it was later reduced to just 1. This salon was well equipped. It allowed for washing, styling, and blow-drying. It provided all the necessary services.
Of course, the facility features a well-equipped infirmary, where a wide range of medical procedures can be performed, from dental treatments to limb amputations under prevailing conditions. Completely out of date by today's fire and health protection standards, ashtrays on nearly every table.
Smoking was generally permitted in this area, with the exception of the upstairs bedrooms. The mattresses posed a fire hazard. People smoked down below. It's important to consider the cultural norms of the time. Now, let's imagine trying to form a government in the 1960s. It's impossible now. An exercise was held here in October 1966. Helmut Schmidt and Ludwig Erhard were present. They were known for smoking all the time. I often joke that a Third World War wouldn't occur if smoking were banned. Back then, Helmut Schmidt wouldn't enter any building where smoking was prohibited. This is why it was allowed in this space. There were ashtrays in the rooms and in the corridors. They were small aluminum ashtrays similar to those found on trains. You could stand there, smoke your cigarette, and then return to the dormitory upstairs.
Whether smoker or non-smoker, access to the bunker was strictly regulated for all. A code word signaled the political elite when it was time to go underground.
When my phone rings and I answer, the only thing I hear in response is Birkengrün. At that point, I know exactly what's happening. I hang up, grab my suitcase, and leave. Birkengrün means birch green. It was the code word for the alarm back in 1966.
NATO sounded the alarm every 2 years during the so-called Windex exercises, where simulations of a confrontation with the Warsaw Pact were played out in the government bunker. For 14 days, military personnel and politicians rehearsed scenarios involving crises, warfare, and nuclear escalation. Everything conducted at the highest level of secrecy. But is it really secret? The East German Foreign Intelligence Service continuously monitored activities at the most confidential location in the Federal Republic. Today, for anyone interested in what was going on back then, the former enemy offers invaluable assistance.
Both the Federal Military Archives in Freiburg and the Federal Archives in Koblenz store these documents. They are not allowed to make them public. In 2007, we explored an alternative route through East Berlin. We approached our former adversaries to inquire whether their foreign espionage activities might have yielded any documents. We discovered that a copy of the original documents that ended up in East Berlin is accessible today. The originals are still unavailable for reading.
In classic espionage fashion, the notorious East German Hauptabteilung A was already monitoring the construction of the bunker.
Lorenz Betzing from Kessler and Luch was responsible for air conditioning technology. His story is quite wild. Unfortunately, he found himself in a complicated situation when he fell in love with a woman who worked for the GDR. This relationship sealed his fate. He was recruited as an agent for the GDR for political reasons. He only agreed to this recruitment out of love for the woman and a desire to contribute to the East. He was the first GDR agent to be identified by name, and now we understand his role and what information he shared.
The Stasi never cracked the communication encoded by this cipher machine, as demonstrated by the blank spaces in their records. Whether bunker designs or bomb plans, both East and West intelligence services rose to the top of their game. This race among spies helped maintain a balance in the deterrent and threat levels of both blocs. Historian Dr. Matthias Uhl, an expert on the Cold War, confirms the sophistication and craftiness of those intelligence services.
The game reflects the dynamics of the Cold War. There were instances when information was deliberately leaked from the West to the East so that an opponent who was captured would be aware of the potential threats they faced. In some cases, this was a targeted strategy to inform the East about our capabilities. We made it clear that they were largely powerless to counteract them. This back-and-forth information exchange was a Cold War game of cat and mouse.
One side took action and the other side followed suit. Ultimately, this strategy worked out. This was the longest period of peace in Europe.
At the end of the 1980s, the global political landscape showed signs of rapprochement. But that's not the case at the NATO exercise Windex 89. In the government bunker near Bonn, a dispute arose over a military plan designed to devastate Eastern Europe and East Germany with 2 nuclear strikes. Chancellor Helmut Kohl was represented by Waldemar Schreckenberger, the coordinator for the Secret Service. As part of the exercise, the Chancellor opposed the plan.
That decision would have come at the expense of the Germans, including those in East Germany. Waldemar Schreckenberger emphasized at the time that the federal government had taken an oath of office to serve the interests of all Germans, not just those in West Germany. So the federal government said, we cannot support this decision. It affects the East Germans. It affects us all, Germany as a whole. We are withdrawing from the exercise.
It was the final Windex exercise in West Germany. On the other side of the Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union demonstrated little regard for such sensitivities. Its little brother, the German Democratic Republic, had virtually no say in the matter. The Kremlin could deploy nuclear weapons without its consent. In preparation for a nuclear emergency, East Germany built over 100 bunker facilities of its own. One of those bunkers is in Harnekop, located just 50 kilometers east of Berlin. Well isolated deep within the forest, it is one of the largest bunker facilities in the country. A 5,000 square meter nuclear bomb-proof facility which would serve as the operational command center for the Ministry of National Defense. In the event of a crisis, the Minister of Defense's staff would retreat to this location. Book author and bunker expert Martin Kaula offers a guided tour of the well-preserved building.
We're currently in the main command center of the GDR's National Ministry of Defense. This bunker was constructed during the height of the Cold War between 1971 and 1976. It was designed as the official residence of the Ministry of Defense, where the military leadership of the GDR would have conducted all official business in the event of an escalation. This is the bunker that the leadership group of the most important generals of the MPA would have occupied in the event of an imminent outbreak of war or in a tense situation where it was believed that the conflict with NATO might escalate to a nuclear level. They would likely have moved into this bunker. From this location, the MPA leadership would command their own units, determine attack targets, assess the situation, and make decisions on how specific forces should operate.
A maximum of 400 selected individuals would continue to coordinate the battle above. The structure is capable of withstanding nuclear weapons for at least 25 days.
The bunker was constructed to defend against nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. It's designed to withstand threats with its thick walls and an outer layer of metal several millimeters thick. That allows it to function as a Faraday cage. This design provides protection against EMP radiation. The bunker has a sophisticated air filtration and airlock system to ensure that both the people and the air inside can be effectively cleaned in the event of an attack with biological or chemical weapons.
Almost everything in the facility is spring-loaded to provide protection against impacts. Even the floor is shock-absorbent.
After the shock of the atomic bomb explosion, the platform can resonate. You can observe it at the edge. Under normal conditions, the platform's fixed in place to prevent constant oscillation. Below, you can see the support bars. In the event of an atomic bomb explosion, the predetermined breaking points would have given way and caused the room to vibrate. Unfortunately, a construction error happened. If the platform had risen, the door would not have opened. Normally, the doors are designed to open, but they remained closed. So platforms were installed in these rooms to stabilize and press down on the primary platform. This ensured that the door could open again.
Until 1990, the main command post of the Ministry of Defense was kept operational every day. The leadership, however, rarely made an appearance. Nevertheless, the East German defense ministers Heinz Hoffmann and his successor Heinz Kessler would have been well prepared for any exercises or emergencies. The office, featuring a secretariat at the front and the obligatory pictures of the head of state and government above the door, was luxurious by bunker standards, especially in the context of socialist East Germany.
The minister has a personal desk and a retreat area with a couch and TV nearby. His female secretary works in an adjoining room. It's a privilege unique to him because few women are allowed to be here. Although this is a bunker, it has wood-paneled walls and beautiful furniture. Certain things could be hidden from view because people aren't allowed to see them unless they're authorized by the minister. They made a big effort to create a comfortable, homely atmosphere for people to work and retreat whenever they need it.
The minister likely would not have enjoyed meals with his comrades either. He would have been afforded special treatment and kept separate from them. In contrast, the canteen for the lower-ranking bunker mates has a distinctly working-class and rustic appeal, complete with the typical aluminum cutlery.
This is the main dining room for the bunker's servants. At the back is the service hatch to the kitchen.
The kitchen and all other services in the bunker were manned 24/7 for decades.
To ensure that the food can withstand a nuclear strike, the cold store itself has been designed to be resilient. It resonates like the floor we saw earlier.
Just like on the other side of the Iron Curtain, the purpose of this bunker was also dead serious. Under the direction of Moscow, military strike scenarios were planned and practiced here. Especially the Federal Republic of Germany was a target for potential attacks. Each operation meticulously documented on detailed maps.
We're in the Situation Room, one of the most important areas of the entire building. This room is on the top floor. In the event of a potential conflict with NATO states, we could observe the progression of a Third World War on a large situation map and on the monitor. It allows the minister's staff to determine how to respond. All the fixtures in this room have been installed with vibration damping to absorb the shock waves that would result from a nuclear explosion. The minister's staff can monitor developments live on the map or on the overhead screens.
Both for lower-level staff and for ministers, decision-making powers would have been limited during the showdown between the superpowers. Real leadership didn't exist in the secret command center because the East German armed forces were under Moscow's operational control. Nuclear bombs, too, were included in the planning scenarios. The consequences of a massive deployment of nuclear weapons for people outside these secret sites were suppressed.
It was believed that future wars would be conducted like this. It was assumed that the conflict would quickly escalate into a nuclear exchange. Significant destruction of targets in both the Federal Republic and the GDR would be the result. The crucial questions then became who would have been involved in this war, which military units would have been operational, how many soldiers, tanks, rockets and artillery pieces would have been available to engage in a possible battle against the enemy in the West.
Some 40 kilometers north of Dresden, near the airfield Großenhain, lies the Granite 1 bunker complex. Marcel Reichel has transformed this former Soviet facility into a museum. The site was on the verge of becoming a lost place, left to decay. Having served as a secret site during the Cold War, it is rich in history.
Großenhain Airfield was in use from 1910 until August 1993. That's 3 military eras. This location is considered one of the most dangerous in the world. It served as an ammunition depot for special weapons. It was to be used as a transit camp for nuclear weapons.
In 1993, Marcel Reichel purchased a site containing 2 round bunkers. He wasn't entirely sure what he was acquiring. He was primarily searching for storage and exhibition space for artifacts related to the history of Großenhain and the airfield. But with each new discovery he made and each new contemporary witness he met, evidence mounted that nuclear bombs were once stored in his bunkers, ready to strike West Germany.
We have rocket transport containers made from carbon fiber material. They're designed for easy transportation of various bombs. These containers need to be handled carefully. We see a champagne glass to indicate one has to be careful. Below you can see the weight labeling, specifically the gross weight, which is still marked with chalk. You can easily label them according to the load.
The bunkers at the once heavily guarded Soviet air base are well camouflaged. Additionally, the design of the steel doors indicates the storage of a special explosive material. They curve inwards rather than outwards.
The design is unique because the bunker is constructed to ensure that if something explodes inside, the door will not open automatically. The bunker was designed not as a missile shelter or an aircraft bunker, but as an ammunition storage facility. It makes sense that the door is engineered to stay closed during an explosion. It prevents any dangerous materials inside from escaping.
Nuclear weapons right on the doorstep? Nobody realized the deadly danger lurking within. Nightmarish from today's perspective.
In Großenhain, we've been sitting on a massive powder keg. Thankfully, all these years have passed by without complications. It's good that we residents of Großenhain were unaware of the danger we were in.
Not even the typically well-informed state security was aware of what the Soviet forces were storing here in Saxony. Since the 1960s, Moscow had been building and stockpiling nuclear weapons here. Neither the East German authorities nor its military leadership were informed about this. The control over the deployment lay entirely in Russian hands, as did the knowledge of the secret locations, including Großenhain.
Every fighter bomber squadron stationed in the GDR and at Großenhain included Su-7 fighter bombers. These aircraft could carry nuclear weapons with an explosive yield of approximately 20 to 40 kilotons. That's roughly the equivalent to the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. For a long time, these bombs were stored in central facilities. In the event of a conflict, they would have been quickly relocated to Großenhain. There, the bombs would have been mounted under the airplanes and flown to their intended targets in the Federal Republic of Germany.
NATO discovered the nuclear depot in Großenhain by chance in 1973, thanks to a Soviet aircraft mechanic in a fighter-bomber, rather than through their own reconnaissance.
He used a simulator to learn how to operate the machine. Pilots assisted him. On his day off, he sat in a plane, started it, and flew west. But he was unable to land it and ejected using the catapult seat near Braunschweig. The plane's wreckage fell to the ground, and upon examination, it was discovered that it had certain switches and instruments necessary for operating a nuclear weapon. The conclusion was that Großenhain had the capability to store nukes.
At the end of May 1973, the wreckage of the Su-7 was turned over to the Soviet Army at the Helmstedt border crossing. The pilot who survived the crash was granted asylum and relocated to the U.S. with a new identity. The commander of the 16th Air Army in Großenhain recalled. The secret location of power was no longer a secret. The town of Cochem, about 100 kilometers west of Mainz. High above the Moselle River, amidst a middle-class residential area, lies a unique secret location deep within a mountain. It is not a military stronghold, but it does serve to protect a crucial element of the Western capitalist system during the Cold War.
We're now in the Bundesbank bunker in Cochem. 15 billion Deutschmarks from a replacement banknote series were once stored here. It was a highly classified project during the Cold War managed by the German Bundesbank.
Art historian and museum director Antonia Mentel leads a guided tour of the secret money bin. It has since become a documentation center and a popular tourist destination. The bunker was originally designed to protect currency. As Lenin famously said, whoever wants to destroy the capitalists must destroy their currency.
This is the actual entrance to our bunker facility. These are the only doors that can be opened and closed hydraulically.
The facility is around 300 meters long and covers about 1,500 square meters. Like other bunkers, it's equipped with control centers, airlocks, and a decontamination area. The primary purpose of this facility, however, is not to protect people, but money.
The primary responsibility of the German Bundesbank is to ensure the stability of the currency. A currency remains stable only if the population has confidence in the monetary system and the currency itself. A few scenarios could undermine that trust. For example, the circulation of contaminated banknotes could harm public confidence. An influx of counterfeit money could also jeopardize trust in the currency.
This is the replacement Deutschmark. At first glance, it looks very similar to a conventional banknote. Only the heavily modified reverse side indicates that it serves as a new form of payment. The Bundesbank has 15 billion worth of these bills stored safely in its bunker. Bomb-proof. Nuclear bomb-proof. But a nuclear bunker alone was deemed insufficient to protect the Deutschmark. Additional security measures were necessary.
Our vault door weighs around 8 tons. The frame and anchoring were cast on site. The installation was a real event. To get access, you needed 3 keys and a combination code held by 3 key holders. These key holders were high-ranking employees from the Bundesbank in Frankfurt. Only by working together could they unlock the door. Any activity that took place within the vault had to be approved by all 3.
The billions are neatly packed and sorted behind the vault door. Each box contains 20,000 banknotes, valued at 100 Deutschmarks apiece. Makes 2 million. Well organized, but not easy to manage.
We tried to recreate what it looked like using 100 Deutschmark banknotes. Each of the 18,000 boxes weighed around 23 kilograms. You can imagine the amount of work it took to fill the vault.
The bankers needed 10 years to secretly stock their hidden vault with 15 billion replacement Deutschmarks. Every box and every delivery meticulously documented in precise handwriting and personally signed for. Today, the former Bundesbank bunker belongs to Petra Reuter. For a long time, she was unaware of the Federal Republic's secret money stash, a true hidden place of power.
We were aware of this when we bought the place, but I went to school in Cochem until I was 10 years old. As a local, I had no idea there was a bunker hidden in the residential area here. The most remarkable thing is that secrecy was maintained. No one would have believed that a replacement banknote series for the entire country of Germany could be housed in such a small tourist town as Cochem. It's such an outrageous story, almost unbelievable, but it worked.
Employees of the Bundesbank lived in 2 houses on the property, which were camouflaged as a training and recreation center. Today, these 2 houses function as a hotel with exclusive access to the bunker complex. In addition to the billions in cash, the bunker could accommodate up to 70 currency guardians. In the event of an emergency, their survival was guaranteed for 14 days. The facilities were equipped with air filters, offices, accommodations, and water treatment systems, like those found in other bunkers, safe and sound, deep underground. One of the most secret sites of the Cold War was worth much more than the 15 billion stored there. Its systemic relevance cannot be overstated.
The Bundesbank was granted a considerable degree of independence. It was allowed to make its own decisions to maintain stability of the currency. This shows the importance placed on currency and money in the West.
In capitalism, money equates to power. Conversely, in socialism, currency holds little significance.
The GDR mark had little intrinsic value. Unlike the Deutschmark, which was a strong currency worth protecting, the GDR mark was not regarded as such. The economy was not a free market economy. In the event of a war, there would have been a defensive and emergency economy in place. Food ration cards would have been distributed. Money would have been rendered irrelevant. So money was not considered an asset worth protecting, and that's why we don't find a counterpart to the Bundesbank's currency vault in East Germany.
Nevertheless, the East German mark ultimately does find its way into a bunker. In 1990, after German reunification, these worthless banknotes are discarded in an old Bundeswehr bunker in Halberstadt and left to decompose. However, treasure hunters and thieves soon stormed the site, and a more secure resting place was needed. So, in 2002, the Credit Institute for Reconstruction incinerates 3,000 tons of banknotes. It's the end of a currency that was never a real foundation of power under socialism anyway.
Knowledge about other people was something worth protecting. This is why the Stasi had so many bunkers. They aimed to safeguard and gather information about individuals. They prioritized that over maintaining the economic or financial assets of the GDR.
At the end of the 1980s, the Bundesbank's secure hiding place for its billions is cleared out. The bunker in Cochem abandoned, the replacement Deutschmarks destroyed. It is unlikely that a similar facility exists for the euro. Electronic transactions have become today's norm. Hoarding physical banknotes is no longer relevant, overtaken by history, like many aspects from the Cold War era. In Freudenberg, approximately 45 kilometers northeast of Berlin, the East German government constructed a bunker facility in the mid-1980s. It held many secrets. Known as Object 7001, it was intended to serve as a communications center and command post for the Minister of the Interior and his staff in the event of war. The building is cleverly disguised as a training center for the East German People's Police. Time has taken its toll on the structure. Water has begun to seep into the bunker system. This site, which represents a part of Cold War history, is at risk of slowly disappearing. Former Army officer Hans-Jürgen Haggett, along with the association Barnimer Bunker Friends, is working to preserve what remains.
After the fall of the Berlin Wall, the German armed forces departed in 1992. The site wasn't used for military purposes anymore. It was vulnerable to vandalism and destruction until we began offering guided tours in 2003. By that time, a lot of damage had already been done. There was a lack of political will to preserve German history. I believe that this site should be preserved as a museum.
The protective structure is made up of 3 interconnected parts, linked by seemingly endless corridors. A vast network of wires converges here. In the event of war, not only the police, but all socialist power apparatuses would receive communications from Object 7001.
This was one of the most important rooms. Approximately 400 phone lines connected it to governmental centers and organizations, including the State Security Service, better known as the Stasi, the Army, and others. It was supposed to coordinate the so-called cooperation of forces during wartime. It also relayed information to the public on how to behave in the event of war, which actions one should take, and which should one avoid.
The facility was essential for communication and information across East Germany during a crisis, making it an invaluable target for enemy eavesdropping during the Cold War. So secrecy was a top priority. The site was officially disguised as a training facility for the People's Police, and only a few select individuals had access to this secret location. Wolfram Kempe is one of them.
I was transferred to this office after graduating from the MPA Military Academy in 1983. I needed to be thoroughly reviewed by the Ministry of Defense. I assumed the role of Deputy Chief of Staff and oversaw operational management. This site was under the highest level of secrecy. Even officers from the Ministry of the Interior were not allowed to enter.
State security, however, was present. Here, everything and everyone was under Stasi surveillance, including Wolfram Kempe, whose secret position of power made him a target for spies, too.
You get used to it. You eventually just accept it. After all, you work in a security sector that's essentially part of the state. It's clear that the state uses its resources to assess whether you're reliable. In this office, I was under constant surveillance by 5 informal collaborators. I found out about it in my Stasi file. Over the entire period from 1969 to 1989, a total of 20 people monitored me.
The construction of the bunker cost 58 million marks, a significant amount for East Germany, especially during its steep economic decline in the 1980s. The bunker was built to be large, but not deep, and it did not meet the promised security standards.
The personnel here were aware that protection class E was the lowest available in the GDR. At best, it could withstand a decent artillery strike or a bomb that would not have detonated on impact. We only had limited resources. Every sack of cement used in these facilities was a sack not available for housing or industrial construction. The GDR could no longer afford to allocate resources like that.
What it could afford for the command bunker, though, were areas that give the illusion of protection from radioactive radiation.
We are currently in the lock, which is well developed, unlike other parts of the bunker. This is where people contaminated with chemical, biological, or radiological weapons would enter. They would be stripped of their clothing, and their clothes would be placed in a separate container for decontamination. It would then be cleaned. The people would have to take a mandatory shower. They were being observed. After showering, they would change into a new uniform. Then they would be allowed to enter for duty. That was the plan, at least. I don't know how effective this would be in an emergency if 20 contaminated people arrived here at once. We had a death room located at the back. This room was for people who were so severely contaminated that they were unlikely to survive. They were not permitted to enter the bunker, so they were left to die under medical supervision.
Now, the bunker itself is facing decay. Unlike in the West, many facilities in East Germany have become lost places.
After German reunification, there was a desire to destroy many military buildings. Officials wanted to close this chapter. What, bunkers? The military? Remember, over 10% of the GDR was used for military purposes. Many of the bunkers became property of the Federal Armed Forces, but after 4 or 5 years, most of them were sealed off and abandoned. Former members of the MPA attached themselves to some of the sites. They did tours, but without any historical context.
The government doesn't support the preservation of these testimonies to German history. Almost as if they should rather just vanish and be forgotten. Located to the west of Bonn is the small village of Orft. Here, everything is not forgotten. This village is home to one of Germany's best preserved bunkers. It was designed to keep the North Rhine-Westphalia state government operational during emergencies. Due to the need for secrecy, the facility was and still is discreetly hidden, accessible only through an unremarkable double garage. Harald Röhling owns the bunker, which has been transformed into a documentation center.
We are at the former temporary headquarters of the North Rhine-Westphalia state government. It's a nuclear bunker that was built in the 1960s to serve as a control center for disaster management in the event of a nuclear war.
A control center equipped with everything the state government would need to organize itself in the event of war. Rescuing victims, clearing and maintaining roads, caring for the injured, rebuilding energy, water, and communication networks, procuring and distributing food. Harald Röhling demonstrates how realistic and detailed the emergency simulation was during practice sessions.
There would be 3 attacks in the Ruhr area, in Essen, Bochum, and Duisburg. Worst of all, we would have had a north wind.
Then the radioactive cloud would have reached the state capital Düsseldorf in just 30 minutes. All rescue and evacuation measures would be organized and managed from the bunker. The necessary communication links still exist today. Comprehensive information for the public was also provided. A fully equipped sound studio, complete with a radio broadcasting system, would ensure uninterrupted communication with authorities and send important instructions to the population.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're reading out a statement from the Press and Information Office of the federal government. The Bundestag has declared a state of tension.
And entertainment would not have been neglected. According to the scenario, 200 state officials could operate here independently for about a month, while nuclear bombs were falling outside. In the early 1960s, both world powers followed the strategy of mutual assured destruction, which meant responding to a first strike with the total destruction of the enemy. Inevitably, Germany would be caught in the middle.
NATO had plans to deploy around 800 weapons each day on German territory. It was clear to civilian leaders that coordination would be limited. Initially, they believed that population movements would need to be intercepted, redirected, and coordinated. This approach becomes silly when they see one mushroom cloud after another rising on the horizon.
During the Soviet era, there was significant reliance on nuclear weapons until the mid-1980s. The Warsaw Pact had a substantial superiority in conventional forces. NATO would eventually be compelled to use nuclear weapons to halt the aggression, facing this overwhelming threat. It could quickly escalate into a full-scale nuclear war.
A nuclear war that some in North Rhine-Westphalia believed they could survive in their state bunker, possibly even more comfortably than in the federal government bunker. Their beds were wider, and their state prime minister's sleeping quarters almost regal compared to the federal president's cot. The facility contained everything from cleaning supplies and office essentials to screws and tools, telecommunications equipment, massive generators, and air filters. Today, it remains almost completely intact, but only because dismantling it in 1993 would have posed too great a challenge. Everything would have had to be carried by hand up the stairs and back out through the entrance. Fortunately, the bunker was spared sinking into decay and becoming a lost place. Thanks to a few enthusiastic historians, many former secret sites can still be appreciated today. These sites are more numerous in the West than in the East, as the bunkers there quickly became notable landmarks. All in all, however, the Cold War era doesn't seem to play a large role in German historiography, at least not for the time being.
We do have a focus on the period from 1933 to 1945, which is important, but it is essential that we don't overlook the period starting from 1949 onward. It is a significant part of German history, and we should remember the past.
A memory of recent history that unexpectedly becomes relevant again today.
What fascinates me about the Cold War is the presence of a highly armed military on both sides. Each were prepared for war. Despite the maximum levels of confrontation, nuclear deterrence effectively prevented this Cold War from escalating into a hot war, particularly in Europe. Deterrence can be successful, although it demands considerable resources. The outcome is security. Without security, everything else loses its significance.
The secret places of power only seem to have fallen out of time, a time when the fear of a Third World War was ever present.